So the next thing we're gonna do, obviously now, is go back to the start game function and then call the snakeboard function so we can be able to put in the character or the token that the user has chosen on the snakeboard. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna be setting it. So first thing we need to do is actually global the A and B coordinates. So I just typed that in, but again, you just need to write global, go back to your start game function and write global A, global B. Remember that these are coordinates that represents the X and Y coordinates that we already created here on lines 20 to 19 to 20. So once you global those two coordinates, as you can see on lines 19 to 20, the next thing you want to do is obviously go back to your start game function and you are going to set the coordinates so that you can place this icon or token, rather not icon, the token, which is the icon photo, you can place it in the right sections of your of the snakes and ladders board. So what you want to do is I'm going to be setting the A right after you say screen dot clear. I'll set A to negative 400. And then B is going to be set to negative 230. And then, of course, we're going to call the snakeboard function, which is this one that we just created now. And really, one thing I also want to do for the snakeboard is I want to be able to just set the player number to player 1 so that it's easier for me to kind of reset the game again back anytime the player's playing. So it's just a good way to do it. You don't have to do it this way. You can also not necessarily need to put a player num, but it just gets the game working in the mode and making it progress. So what I want to do is go back to the place where I have defined all of those variables that I have that I would use. If you go back to the top, and right there, I'm going to create a variable called player num, and I'm going to set it to, so essentially this game can be modified for 2 players, but I'm setting player num equals to 0 in the beginning. So, but I'm just going to set it to player 1. So what I want to do is come back to the snakeboard function and I'm going to global player num. So I can be able to set if player num is equal to 1, that's how the snakeboard, well, the token on the snakeboard would move. So that's just triggering that action to happen, which doesn't necessarily have to be the case because you only have one player here. So like I said, you can actually opt for this option out, so you don't necessarily have to have this option. But I just prefer having it just to make that trigger go on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say if player num, now that we've actually globaled it, if player num is equal to 1, then everything that's really under here, I just want to space it in. So all this whole section that moves the token on the snake board, I'm going to space it in. So again, just to make you see what's going on, I'm selecting everything and I'm spacing it in. So that's really what moves the token on the snake board. At this point, you've really finished to get your token on the snake board, and also that you've done the function that will be moving that token on the snake board based on the position that the computer will choose, because essentially we're getting the player involved. We're asking the player if they would like to roll the dice, because that's how you play a typical snakes and ladders game. Would you want to roll the dice? Yes, the dice gets to be rolled. This is the reason why we have this animation, this frames that we've included here, that we're going to be making the animation for rolling the dice. And then, of course, we make the computer to act as the player, which basically, to make this more challenging and dynamic as a game, the computer acts as the player and chooses the position so that from 1 to 12, since we're taking 2 dice, and so total of 12 faces, and so the computer chooses a position from 1 to 12, and that's how the token moves on the snake board until, if the player is successful, would arrive at home, would arrive at the last board, and that's like the last section, and that's like the end, and that's where the player wins, and we have like a winning screen. So really what's happening is if you run this program, so let's give it a quick run and see what happens now when we actually choose a token. So I'm going to stop and I'm going to run, and it starts with the whole what is your name, and again, I'm going to widen the screen, so I'll put in my name here and I'll hit an enter, and then it goes to the first screen. I click on start game, and as you can see, I can choose a token. So let's say I choose C, and then as you can see, my token should appear on, okay, so my C token is not appearing on my start game. Let's see why. So we have successfully basically put in, okay, there's a reason why. So that's because the reason it's not appearing is because we've put in player num, and we set in player num to be equal to 1. So the snake board does run, but if player num is equal to 1, of course it will run. So what we're going to do is we are going to, so for example, if I took out player num, which is what I'm kind of having a dilemma. We may keep it or remove it, but in the beginning, and something I don't want to have to do is always, well, we could do it here, guys, actually. We can say player num equals to 1, okay, because that's important. But then that means you have to global player num. So that's the reason why you don't see that token appear. So player num, you global player num inside of your start function, because then the computer has to know that player num should be set to 1. And once it's set to 1, then it will be recognizable so that this token can be moved properly according to the A and B coordinates, which would be what you set it to be in the beginning. So now let's run it again and let's see if that changes that, which is where you would have to make sure it does work. And if you have 2 players, this is where you say player num equal to 2, and so that would be for player 2's turn. So you can actually expand your game with this example that I'm giving you for second player. So if we start and then we go to option C, so you can now see that my token is now appearing properly. So you see that little fox. So there it is. It's now working because now it recognizes that this is player 1. So player num is player 1. So of course we go back again, and if we run this code, so I'm just going to put in Alicia again, and let's say I choose a different token. So I'm just going to try one more. Let's say I go with A this time, so you can see the penguins appearing. That's exactly what we want to happen. So now we are completely done with the parts of making the screen functional and opening the first screen to the second, and then getting to open the snake board as well. So now we are going to do our last function, which would be the one that's the main. So the main game, which is actually where that token gets to move, the dice gets to be rolled, and things get to happen. So we're just going to start that and of course continue that in our next video tutorial. So the first thing we're going to be doing for that is we're going to be creating a function. And so the function will be, I think we can call it main. You can basically call your function anything, but I would like to call it main. And so that would just make everything, no, that makes it seem nice with the name. So, but you can call it anything. So I'm just going to call it main, or you can call it main game. And this should be, of course, before your snake board function. So go to the top and create it. And then in your main, there are a couple of things that we have to global. First of all, we have to set the position in the beginning to a certain position. But I think if that's necessary, we will create it. We're going to set position equals 0 in the beginning, and then make changes with the position. But first, let's global some of the things that we need. We're definitely going to global the A coordinates. We're going to global the B because that's really what sets the token to move on the snake board. So I'm globaling A and B, as you can see here, and that's in our new function called main. And remember that this function is the one right on top of the snake board. So we have the snake board function, we have the start game function, which basically gets the user to choose a token, and then we have the home, which goes from the first screen to the second screen. And now we are on the main. So we're globaling A and B, and we're going to global the player num, because you see that we're setting player num to be player 1 or first player. So we're going to global player num. We may also need to create a variable called position and global that, but we'll see in a couple of minutes. So what we're going to do is I'm going to use pen 1. So we already have pen 1. I'm guessing that because now we need to use something that's going to help us. I guess we can create a separate pen actually, because we need something that's going to help us to get the dice to roll. So that's the first thing we want to do, is to make the dice roll. Whenever we ask the player, would you like to roll the dice to start the game? They say yes, then the dice gets to roll, and then the computer acts as the player now. And so the player is playing, but the computer will choose that position. So what we're going to do is I'm just going to say, I'll create a pen called roll, and I'll just say turtle right here. And then I'm just going to go with the whole roll dice question and say, would you like, so this is kind of how the game starts, where we ask the user, would you like to roll the dice? And something I also wanted to do, which I forgot to do, is I wanted to print a section here, which is just going to be called game section. So I'm just going to go down from here and I'm going to print a section and just call it game section. So get ready to play, or you can put something like that, get ready to play. And then you basically put in comments, well, a nice comment, and then I'll just print this again, print this dotted lines at the bottom. So here in the next line, I'm just going to print something like this. You can, of course, apply color if you want. So I'm just going to print color to change, kind of make it dynamic. So you can go search up a color if you would like. Remember, we have the Lihawi website. You can search it up and you can get a color from there. So I'm going to go to a color that I would like to apply, and you just have to search them from here. So I'll go to colors and I'll choose what kind of color can I get really. I need to scroll up a little. There it is. You go to 16 colors and you get the color you want. So I'm going to go with the blue color. So you got to copy the color code, of course, and then go back to your game and you have to post it in your game. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to post it in there, or paste it rather. So that would make that appear in blue color. So now I'm going to finish the statement and say string input, of course, and then of course from here will be would you like to, so I'm going to ask the question of would you like to roll the dice, and yes or no. Okay, so I'm giving a space for them to respond, and if yes, this is where we get to make the dice roll. So that's where we get to use these frames so we can create that animation of rolling the dice as long as they keep saying yes. So we're just going to start that off. We will, because we have 5 frames in total, we're going to roll this using a while loop. So we're going to say while roll dice equal yes, then we're going to come down and we're going to set x to equal to 1, because then we're going to use that to be able to create this animation of rolling the dice. And then we're going to say while, so here we're going to say while x is less than 6, not less than or equal, because it has to roll for 5 times. Then we're going to start putting in our frames. So we're going to start with the whole if x is equal to 1, starting with the first frame, so we can join them together and they create this effect of the dice rolling. As you can see, if I move them a bit faster, they make those, you see how the effect goes. So we're going to be putting in if x is equal to 1, then we're going to use this roll that we created here as a turtle pen so we can get to put these frames and create that animation of rolling the dice. So this roll right here. All right, so there it is. So then we go into roll.penup first. And then we put a circular bracket, so we command the computer to raise the pen. And so after that, we hit an enter, and then we say roll.goto. So we're going to put it in the center of the screen. So that's at positive 30, negative 30 for y. So positive 30 for x, negative 30 for y. And then we go roll.pen down. So we put the pen down, and of course we do screen.addShape since we're putting in pictures. And we're going to be adding the first frame1.gif, okay? And then we do roll.shape frame1.gif. And we kind of have to repeat this for the remaining frames. We have to do it if x is equal to 2, if x is equal to 3, so the third frame, the fourth, and the fifth. So really, we're going to have to add those codes there. But for now, I think we're going to be stopping here in this video tutorial. Of course, when we come to the next one, we will continue to create this animation to get the dice to roll. This will be the point in which we will stop. And again, to recap on our progress, what we've pretty much done is we have our home screen. And from our home screen, we go on to our second screen. So just another recap before we end this tutorial. And of course, from here, when we click on the start button, it moves on to the next screen, and then we get to choose the character we want. So if I choose character B, then that character gets to be placed on the home section. So just to show a little bit better, make sure you zoom out a little on your screen to see it. And so the cat is here, and then it's supposed to move on to the next thing, which is this is where we're going to be making this main game function work, which we haven't done yet because we're not done with it. So we're going to be stopping here in this video tutorial. When we come next time, we will continue working on this. And yeah, and I hope to see you next time.